This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. We're at the 2019 UIC Medical Cannabis Symposium at Tweed Heads. We're speaking with Rhys Cohen from the University of Sydney's Lambert Initiative.
Thank you very much.
Again, did it. Lambert Initiative.
Everybody does that.
Welcome, Rhys. How are you
Thank
going?
you very much. Very good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
Now, tell us a little bit about the Lambert Initiative. What's its main goals?
Right, so we're a medical scientific research group. We're philanthropically funded, so Barry and Joy Lambert generously donated about $35 million to the university in 2015 to set up the Lambert Initiative. And it's a interdisciplinary translational medical science research group, and we focus exclusively on cannabis, cannabinoids, and the endocannabinoid system. So at the moment, we're very heavily focused on pediatric epilepsy, in particular Dravet syndrome. So Barry and Joy's granddaughter, Caitlin Lambert, has Dravet syndrome, and that's what motivated their generous gift. So we do lots of quite technical preclinical research in epilepsy, as well as a few other conditions. And we were also engaging with the community and government and industry to facilitate better patient access and more reasonable regulations for medical cannabis in Australia.
Okay, so here's the big elephant in the room, patient access. Constantly frustrating for people. How are we going?
We're getting better. It's been hard. This time last year, if you asked me how patient access was, I would say abysmal, horrible, tear the whole system down. It's fundamentally broken. There have been some improvements made. I'm not saying that all the issues have been solved necessarily, but we're definitely moving in the right direction now. Many states and territories, including New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria, have signed on to a more unified patient access pathway, which is funneled through a single online portal managed by the Federal Department of Health. So
that's the Special Access Scheme.
Right. The Special Access Scheme Category B online portal has really done a lot to increase patient access. And also the emergence of a lot of these new cannabis access clinics, I think, have contributed significantly to patient access as well.
Okay, but you've got a few issues there, of course. There's the rigmarole of the paperwork for the SAS2.
Yep.
Then you've got actual cost and physical access to the appropriate drug.
Yep.
How are we going with that?
Cost hasn't come down really, as far as I've seen, and cost is prohibitively expensive. It is, along with the inability to drive, it is the number one issue facing patients in Australia who are trying to access cannabis legally, for sure. We have been told that prices will come down due to natural market forces. I'm a bit sceptical about that, only because price information is not made available to doctors at the point of writing an application. So as a doctor, if you're wanting to be informed about which medicine is going to be most affordable for your patient, you have to individually contact suppliers and do a price comparison yourself. And that's something most GPs or most doctors aren't going to be doing.
Okay, so there's also another issue, and it's another one of these white elephant, big elephants in the room. Not a white elephant, it's a big elephant. And that is, a lot of research has been set up to find harm. It can't find harm. Given that it can't find harm, should we just legalise it? Patients are accessing a plant from the black market, so it's not a drug, it's a plant.
Yep.
It's still not hurting people. Should we just legalise it?
Well, I'm not a clinician or a scientist, so I really can't speak about whether certain cannabis use is harmful or not. I think it's naive to assume that any drug is harmless, but harms exist with all drugs, and harms are there to be managed, right? So you can't have a harmless medical intervention, generally speaking. It's about minimising harm. So that's one thing. Now, I'm not going to comment publicly about recreational legalisation, but what I will say is if you take a harm minimisation approach to medical cannabis, if you have a cannabis user who is using cannabis for medicinal purposes, it's safer for them to use a regulated product than an unregulated product. So in my mind, regardless, or as a secondary order question, whether or not they should be prescribed, if they're already using it and they could use a safer product, I think that's a reasonable argument to make, for sure.
What about education? I mean, one of the issues with patient access is finding a doctor that will write the SAS2 who is reasonably educated to know what product,
right,
or even how to point the patient towards supply.
Yeah. So there have been a few new educational programs come online in the last year or so that are aimed at doctors, and they are accredited by the RACGP and are starting to meet that need slowly. Much more work needs to be done in that area. Research that the Lambert Initiative has conducted included a survey of general practitioners in Australia, about 650 GPs in 2018 it was. We found that doctors generally said, or GPs generally said, they don't know enough. They feel ignorant about medical cannabis, and that makes them reluctant to prescribe it, even though a majority of the people who responded to the survey said that they support the prescription of medical cannabis, especially for certain indications. So you're 100% right. The education gap is real, and it needs to be addressed. The challenge is that the federal government and state governments don't generally play in that space. Generally speaking, they leave it up to individual training service providers to work with colleges to get accredited training up and running. So to expect the governments to step in and do this themselves, it isn't part of their normal way of operating. And that's why we're facing a bit of pushback from them, I think, because it's not normal for them to be doing that kind of work.
Right.
But players are stepping in. We are seeing more educational programs come online, and hopefully we'll have even more.
I was speaking with Dr. Teresa Topic before yesterday.
Yep.
And she was saying that she's been running some RACGP educational training programs. That's one doctor trying to, multiply herself. Unfortunately, though, particularly with epilepsy, we see Epilepsy Action running a group where in a group of, I think it was 30 or 32, there was 2 GPs, and most of them were actually nurses. So you say that there's a deficiency in their knowledge. They say they'd like to know, they don't come to the training. I mean, what needs to happen to actually get the word out that A, there is training, and B, they've got some light at the end of the tunnel to be able to offer their patients the appropriate support, the appropriate drug.
Right. Well, I think when you think about the kinds of education and training that people do, you've got to think about cost and convenience. So as one, I've actually attended Teresa Taupic's course, and I thought it was incredibly valuable, and I recommend it to any doctor who wants to learn about medical cannabis. But as you say, that's a face-to-face 2-day...
We need to clone her.
Right. So, we need to clone her, or we need to develop online training. I mean, we have the tools. This is a very well-established...
Clone
her. Okay. Well, let's do both. Let's clone her and put it online at the same time, right? But there are opportunities to develop and deliver online training, which doesn't require physical presence, is a lot cheaper, and can be, delivered at infinite scales, essentially. And I think that's really where we should be working towards. So I know there's been one short course made available online that is accredited by the RACGP, which is primarily about pain, I believe. And more of that needs to be made available.
Is there any machinations, any dreams ahead for taking the prescription of cannabis, medical cannabis, off the SAS and having it just to be able to get it over the counter at the local pharmacy?
Well, this is a debate that we're having is, how restricted should cannabis products be? What kinds of cannabis products are we talking about? If you walk into any shop in London, you can buy CBD products off the shelf. Is that an appropriate way to facilitate access to medicines? I'm not sure. I mean, to my mind, if you're a legitimate medical patient and you have a medical condition and you need a pharmaceutical medicine or some kind of medicine, to me it feels weird to not have that go through a doctor. But there are arguments being made about, well, maybe cannabis is a wellness product, maybe it's a nutraceutical, maybe there are different types of products, all the way from Sativex down to CBD gummies that you can buy in a drugstore in California.
Right.
So I mean the policy options that we have are nearly infinite, and it's about having a reasonable conversation based on science and informed by compassion.
When you're dealing with something like Dravet syndrome, epilepsy, which obviously has neurodevelopmental issues along with it, and then you get people worrying about neurodevelopmental issues from cannabis or CBD or whatever. Do you think that's real?
Well, once again, I'm not a clinician or a scientist, so I shouldn't comment on, whether that risk is legitimate or not.
Do the GPs think that it's real? who are in the Lambert Initiative?
Well, fundamentally, doctors care about their patients, and some doctors...
Are they concerned about it?
Of course, naturally. And doctors should be concerned about any drug that they give their patient. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Maybe some doctors are too cautious, but once again, that's not for me to decide necessarily.
So I guess where I was going with this was the gummies
right.
in California.
Yeah.
Do you think would that be a reasonable delivery option for somebody young who's probably got poor compliance, who's got fights
absolutely
on your hand?
not. No, absolutely not.
No.
So all of the evidence that we have available to us, as far as the literature shows, and this is information that's relayed to me from my scientific colleagues, is for a CBD intervention to have any kind of therapeutic effect. You're looking at very high doses. You're looking at hundreds of milligrams per day. You can't get that in a CBD gummy. Yep. You might get that through Epidiolex.
Teddy bear.
It's one of those giant ones, right? Yeah. No, and then of course all the problems around, like, if it's a real medicine, why is it in a lolly in a store,
an issue,
right? Yeah. So
I got to say, I'm very impressed with the work that you're doing. Good luck for the future. I mean,
thank you very much.
I shouldn't say good luck, good fortune, because this is something that will progress. It has to progress. The Australian public wants it. There are sick people out there that need help, and you're at the forefront of helping these people, so well done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us on FX Medicine.
Thank you, appreciate it.
This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook.